Everyone. So, thank you all for joining us. Before we get into the discussion, let's all just briefly introduce ourselves. I'm Jodi Chisarick. I'm the General Sales Manager at Scripps. We have 8 different networks. We have local stations. One of our networks that probably is important to this discussion is Bounce, which is an African American targeted network. So we're always, trying to reach a diverse audience in lots of different ways and work with our partners to do that. And I'll pass it on to Kelly.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly Burke. I have an Irish name, but as you can tell, I'm Filipino. I'm the Associate Director of Brand Marketing and Strategy at Avocados for Mexico. And we're doing a water challenge, and I'm very competitive, so that's why I have this water bottle with me.
Yeah, well, you just saw me. So Dana Lawrence, marketing at American Airlines.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Enyia, brand director at Samsung Mobile, and I'm Nigerian. So there you go.
Hola, buenas tardes. I am not doing a water challenge, but this is not alcohol. This is an energy drink to get me through the day. I'm Iris Diaz. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for the Dallas Mavericks. No, we are not in playoffs, but we will be in playoffs next year. I've been with the Dallas Mavericks for 5 years. I am Mexican-American, born here in Dallas. The only Latina in the NBA, sadly, that will change soon.
Well, thank you. We certainly are representing up here, as you can see. So, so I thought that a good way to get started before we get into using DE&I in our marketing campaigns is consumers are very wary of trusting companies if they don't think they're authentic in their messaging. So, and it was interesting because in one of the earlier panels, Women in Marketing, somebody said, use the example of, let's not support and run a campaign to support Women's History Month if you don't support women in the marketplace. So I think it would be really interesting to hear from each of you what your companies are doing to support DE&I internally and for their employees, because it's an internal and an external message, and it obviously starts internally.
Yeah, so I love that you had mentioned that it starts internally. And so at Avocados from Mexico, I think one thing that surprises a lot of people is that we're a pretty small company. We're only, I think we're less than 40 employees, maybe 37 employees. And we represent like 9 different nationalities within the office. English is actually not the most common language spoken at Avocados from Mexico. No habla español un poquito, Jorge was laughing at me. And about 60% of our workforce is female. So, the diversity, starts internally, and it's about bringing different backgrounds and ideas, different work experiences. And when you have that, those conversations internally, then you can influence the external conversation. So for us and what we're doing as a brand is, the Hispanic market is very important, as you can tell, Avocados from Mexico. But also, one of the things that we've learned about our consumer is that as, Hispanics acculturate into, American culture, their consumption of avocados actually drops. So it's really important, especially having that cultural connection, that heritage piece to the product, being authentic as a brand and showing up in a way that resonates with our consumer, the way that they have experienced the product, in their own lives. So, it's a huge focus for us.
Yeah, I would say at American, DEI, as I would imagine at most major companies, it's such a focus overall and internally, but I do think there's a strong connection between what you are doing internally and where you are strong, and where you are strong from a customer experience standpoint with your customers, and as far as what you can do from a marketing standpoint. Because I think it gives you greater license to talk about it from a marketing standpoint. We have been recognized in American as best company to work for LGBTQ plus team members. And so that's something that then we can reflect that back to our customers, because we know we're coming from a place of strength, whether there's with other segments that we know we have opportunity areas. And that's something that we need to focus on in a bigger way as far as what our customer outreach is and what we are communicating. So I think it's that balance, but it's always a focus and a through line through everything we are doing.
And when we spoke, you talked about they were doing like a pilot recruiting specifically as well.
Yeah, I know it's interesting you talk about what is the role of women when you think of DEI. And I think it depends on the situation and what it is. It's probably not as foremost for a lot of people when we say DEI, but for us, we were looking at what are careers where women are underrepresented. And so pilots, that's one of the main areas that is really underrepresented for women. So we have a lot of key programs. We have a cadet academy where we are actively reaching out to people to talk to them about future careers. We do programs all the way from at schools. And it's really for everyone. It's for all. We're really encouraging STEM, but it's showing what a great career it can be. And we really focus on it from a DEI perspective overall because we are underrepresented in that and really showing that this is a great career. And so it's something that's more internally and talent focused, but I think that then is reflected throughout. So I'm talking on, but this was an interesting story. We had Bessie Coleman. I don't know if you know she is, but she was the first female Black pilot. Was not associated with American Airlines, but we actually told her story just as part of focusing on women and pilots and DEI, etc. Mattel actually recently came out with a Bessie Coleman Barbie. So they actually reached out to us to do a partnership because since we had highlighted her and what she had done, so it kind of creates this natural growth and things to talk about and to, engage with the customer.
And, for us at Samsung, everything we do is so personal on a daily basis. And obviously being a global brand, naturally we're exposed to various backgrounds, ethnicity, race, demographic, everything. And so the ideas really do stem from those priorities and from those perspectives that those different backgrounds bring to the table. And so when we think about DE&I, it's not just about a top-down approach, and it shouldn't be for anyone, right? It really should be fostered by the individuals who work there and ensuring that we're empowering them and giving them a voice so that they can champion all the things that are the most important to them. Because that's where I think we've been able to see true ideation that's real and authenticity that drives and fosters real engagement. And I think, when we talk about, we had this conversation about the women in marketing earlier, Jodi, and we talk about being able to advocate, right, for what is your priority. And so one of the things that Samsung does is we not only champion these individual ideas, but for us, it's about making sure that all the employee resource groups are actually collaborating and working together, because building the idea shouldn't just come from one individual, one team, or one function. It needs to be an all-hands approach for us to actually further the agenda.
100%. I think from internal for us, as you guys know, and I'm going to just start off there, our owner is not shy at all. But I do feel the reason why we do everything that we do and everything that we do, and even when I'm doing interviews, when I'm meeting new people, when we're networking, when we're on panels, like everything that we do is for the fan. The fan looks like all you guys. They don't just look like me. They don't just look like our owner. They don't look just like our CEO. But it does start from the top down, but it really needs to fester. It fosters and festers within our employees. When I started, I was one of 4 Latinos that was with the Mavs. And it's just a testament to what sports is usually meant. We understand that. But changing the dynamic and having a CEO that's really open about making sure DE&I is part of what we speak on and from our lingo, from how we act, how we do things, how we do our business, who we partner with. And I'll tell you a small story there. But now 50% of our leadership is women, and 35% of that is Black and brown people too. So while we are the first and we might be changing that dynamic, we hope that it really starts those conversations with other sports teams. But it really is internal. I've been in so many meetings where people just check the box and say, okay, well, she fits the paper, let's just hire her. And we just talked about that. In the fact that just don't hire people because of what they look like. And we know that is important, but can they do the job? And don't do that. You're also damaging the business authentic resources, but also the authenticity of how fans or customers or people partners see you guys as. We understand we have to be diverse. There's no option. There's no other option to do our marketing campaigns. Our players are half of them aren't even from Dallas or the United States. So we understand that their audience is very different. Their fan following is very different. That's a quick story. We had a partner, and I'm not going to say who, but there was a company that wanted to partner with us and be our official XYZ. I'm not going to say what. But we were in a meeting, and it was literally at 5 minutes. I timed it at 5 minutes. I'm like, yeah, we're not partnering with you guys. Our values are who we are. Our crafts are who we are as the Dallas Mavericks. And it's the consistency of how we deliver that everywhere, from our social media, from what we support. You guys might see some stuff on social media that you guys are probably not happy with or maybe okay with. At the end of it, that's who we are, whether you want to follow us or not. At the end of it, we understand that we have a lot of fans who can support what we do because of the organization that we're and what we're trying to lead. This company, I remember they mentioned, you guys are big in community. We're also big in community. And I'm like, okay, let them go ahead and deal with their, do their speech. And then I said, hey, so what is your definition of you being in the community? Well, we give discounts to churches for their flyers. Dios mío, that is not what that means. But if you don't explain it, and if you're not the company or if you're not the leader doing that education, then we're failing the company, we're failing the employees, we're failing our partners. We've had to leave money on the table because of that. That we know who we are. Whether you like it or not, that's who we are. That we get more fan base and more support because we are consistent on who we are.
Awesome, thank you. So most of you mentioned women specifically. And as DE&I becomes more forefront and part of the conversation and a bigger initiative for companies, 10 years ago for women, it was always about the glass ceiling. Where do you guys feel that women fall into the conversation when it relates to DE&I? I would agree with you. You said, Iris, you look around the table and there's many more women than there used to be. And until recently, most of the heads of broadcast network sales were all women. And that has changed a little bit with some of the changes at the big broadcast networks. But do you feel that women are still considered, underserved and underrepresented and part of the DE&I conversation?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. And, I'm fortunate enough to work for a very strong female leader who's in the audience, and you'll hear from her later today. But I think, the data and the research shows it, right? When you have more diverse teams, you get better business results. And that's on account of having the different perspectives so you can have different problem solving solutions. And that doesn't just pertain to race and ethnicity, right? And where you grew up, it pertains to whether, being a woman as well. And so as a Black woman, right, this is something that is very, very inherent and woven into the fabric of everything that I do on a daily basis, because I have to be very deliberate that when I am showing up and setting the agenda, I'm setting the agenda for myself, but also for the other people who might not have access to the rooms and the spaces that I am currently in. And don't get me wrong, right? We have made progress, and there have been instances where we've seen improvement when it comes to representation for women, but there is still a huge disparity and a lot of work to be done, especially for women of color. And so for me, it's very important to make sure that women remain at the center of this conversation, right? Because everyone wants to be able to look up and look around them and see people that look like them.
I add a little bit to that too, because the one thing that I've noticed, and the reason why I speak and do these panels and everything, I got it out of my comfort zone, because for me, it's like, I'm here to do marketing. I'm not here to go speak for people. And it's not because it wasn't my priority. My priority is to make sure that we're running a business and we're running a lot of things that we had a lot of pressure on in sports. But understanding when I was starting to speak to high school girls and girls that look like me that are Latino, and then crying and saying, oh my God, I can't believe you did it. I'm like, well, it took a lot to get here, but I joke because my parents don't know what I do. If I don't work for Telemundo or Univision, they don't know what I do. But it is important to make sure that I keep telling that story and that we do show up, because if you are a woman here in a leadership role, help them up. There is more room. There is a lot of room. And I see that a lot, especially in so many things that we are part of, that it's like, well, no, it's just me. No, it's you and 5 other women that are in part of your team. I have my assistant here because I'm like, no, you come here with me too. But it's a representation of something bigger than just you yourself. If you are in leadership, and I'm not here to educate anybody because you guys are all very smart, that it's help everybody up. Give them time to mentor. If it's mentor an area that you can focus on, that it is very important. It goes a long way. If people are reaching out to you on LinkedIn, give me 5 minutes of your time. I got into this position because of people like that. So that is my 2 cents on that question.
So let's pivot a little bit and talk about, what you guys are all so great at, and it's your marketing campaigns. How do you make sure that your marketing campaigns, when you're trying to reach a diverse audience, are authentic? Because that's the word that you hear the most when you're talking about trying to reach any audience. And, it's how we started our conversation, is the consumers have to and the fans have to trust you and trust the company. So how do you ensure that you are authentic in your message, and how do you keep the consistency going in that?
Yeah, I'll take this one. So we have the benefit of, being a company that is really rooted in, Mexicanity. It's a word that we actually made up as one of our values in the company. And testing is one area that we really pressure test the messaging that we have, the concepts that we come up with, especially for our Hispanic campaigns, to make sure that we're resonating culturally with our audience, because, avocados have such a special place in Mexican and Hispanic culture. It's almost habitual in terms of like that product relationship. So whatever message that we put out there, we want to make sure that we're testing it. But then also as an internal gut check, we have so many people who come from that cultural background and heritage that can essentially be that final check for us to make sure that what we're putting out there resonates.
Yeah, and I think from an American standpoint, we I would say we had really strong representation in a lot of our advertising, but felt that authenticity of certain groups was definitely an opportunity. And so we hired a multicultural agency, and they led a campaign where we were targeting Black travelers. And they brought such great insight overall into really those nuances in the ad campaign, not just who was being cast, but everything from the wardrobe to the hairstyles to different authentic moments, etc. And that was great, and they did an awesome job, and we loved it. But there's also the reality is we can't afford, our budgets will not allow to have a separate campaign for every target market that we want to go after that that will show that authenticity. And so, when we really thought about it, we ended up making a multicultural agency. I don't know if you're all familiar with Walton Isaacson, but they are now our agency of record. So we were really pleased with the work. And what we said is we really want that authenticity brought to the broader case of everything that we are doing across the board. And that, it's not DEI marketing, it's just marketing. And that needs to be infused into every single thing that we are doing across the board. So not that that's a requirement to have a multicultural agency, but for us, it was really important to lean in, and we've been so pleased with their work. So that's not the only thing. We do testing, we do all of those different groups. We review things, we get feedback from our EDRGs, we talk with customers and everything. But that's one of the recent things that we've done to really make sure that we're advancing in this important area.
And I'll just kind of piggyback off something you just said, where you can't possibly all the time target every single segment or audience base, right? So I think the authenticity has to actually start from the brand. And, no matter which way you slice it, if you as a brand do not believe in what you're putting out there, it will not come across as authentic. And that's something that we have and been very cognizant about. How do we lean into, to your point, going beyond just the color of your skin, to leaning into specific cultural cues and use cases that are very specific to you and how you engage with the brand. And that's what you lean into to really make sure that you're driving that authenticity and that you're making sure that you're connecting on a personal level with this particular audience group.
I think to your point too, it's like if you don't have a resource internally, hire people to do it. You can say, I don't know how. Trust me, there's things that we did for Mass Take Action after the George Floyd incident 4 years ago that we know sports. We know that. We know that that is important. We hired an agency to help us with the marketing for it, not because we couldn't do it, is well, one, we didn't have full resources, but we understood that we needed to outsource and really question more of what our fans were looking for and what we need to make sure that we built it more authentic. I am a quick fan. There's a saying in Spanish, "Los niños y los borrachos dicen la verdad," which is like the drunk people and kids tell you the truth. Our fans are quick to go on social media and call us out on everything, but if you have people that understand the audience, and to your point, we can't market to everybody. We understand that there's different tunes for everybody. But if we can hone into Hispanic, if we can hone into German, if we can hone into Slovenian, which are major spoken, FYI, spoken languages from our fans, those are the areas that we influence. It's just a small tidbit. I mean, if you guys haven't seen the press release, we're playing in Abu Dhabi in October as our international game. Our English is not going over there. We understand that. So we then have to build resources and work with agencies outside of our what we know to be able to build that authenticity. And I say this too, don't Google Translate Spanish. You can see that right off the bat. That is Google Translate. And you're diminishing the brand at that point, and you're not really coming off as authentic, and that's what our fans want. Trust me, they tell us every day on our social media platforms. So, and also at the arena when they're screaming. But it is important to make sure that you do show up that way. You show up for them, and for us, every marketing piece that we do is for the fan. It's for them. It's for you guys. I hope, because I'm assuming everyone's a fan. But it's for you guys, and if we don't come across that, you're gonna unfollow us. You're not gonna come to the games. You're not buying our merchandise. So you want to make sure that if you are raising your hand like, hey, I don't know anything about German, great. Let's research it and follow up to make sure that you use the right people, you use the right agencies and creative teams to be able to authenticize that whole advertisement that you do.
I'll say one more thing on this, right? I think we always talk about the things that we're doing right about it, or what we shouldn't be doing, but no one has the tough conversations around where, as a brand, you want to be a part of a conversation, but you just really haven't built the brand relevancy or the brand connection to actually be a part of the conversation. And, I think that happened to us, when there was definitely some political tensions, going on over the last couple of years. And as much as we wanted to be a part of the conversation, our head of social media, we had to really take a step back and figure out, is this the right conversation? Do we have the built-in cachet to actually weigh in on this? And it's fine if you don't, right? You don't have to be a part of every single conversation, but it's important that from that, we were able to go back and really look at, okay, what do we stand for? What do we want to be able to express, when and how? And I think that was a really good learning experience for us to realize when it's important for us to have a voice and when it's important not to, and to be okay with that.
Before we move on, anybody have any questions for any of these amazing women up here? Or me? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I will jump in at least from we look at it from a media perspective as well. So it's not just about what we are representing to the customers, but also how we think about it from the different companies that we're using. And of course, as a company, there's all sorts of vendor relationships and they're looking at that. But from a marketing and media standpoint, we have a certain percentage of our media that we are dedicating, in this case specifically, to multicultural owned publishers.
Yeah, and I think it's almost you're looking at the media not in where you're like, I'm trying to just hit this person, so I'm going to go with this particular platform. I think is, does it make sense, right? So we have a few different projects that we do that maybe lend itself to, one platform versus the other. And I think that's where the authenticity comes into, right? Where you're leveraging the tools and the platforms and the voices that can actually bring the idea to life in a real way. Because I think that's where people usually sort of fall apart, where they're trying to execute something and then they don't have the right partners to help them do it in the right way. So that's how, we really look at who are the partners that we would engage with, right? And what benefit do they add when it comes to how we're trying to engage and reach this audience.
Any other questions?
I can add, actually. That's a very interesting question because we actually started something on our website. And this is something we wouldn't have known unless someone from our DMAT group, which is our Dallas Mavericks Advisory Council that we built 4 years ago from our CEO, that we were looking at everything with different eyes from different areas and industries. Our website alone, if it's someone that it's not ADA compliant, we didn't know that. From a people are asking, why don't you guys have more video? Because someone that has a disability might not be able to look at that. When you're uploading photos, you have to make sure that there's a description for every single photo, because if someone that can't read, if they can use a voice adapter to be able to read off what that photo would be to visually tell you that story. So we actually started that last year for our website, and we actually have been the leader of it for the NBA, for example. So that is something that was, again, to our point, is like, it's brand new. I didn't know about it. Let's learn more. And how do we do that? Not only from our digital assets, but everything else that we do in the arena, all the other items that we also that make sure that it's accessible. I mean, for us, it's like if you're talking about the Dallas Mavericks, good or bad, you're talking about it somehow. So I think that's a great question, because it was something that definitely, it started from a question like that prompted us to do this for someone that had this.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think, with Samsung and what we do, everything that we bring to the market is tasked with improving everyone's here's daily livelihood. So it is built into the core of what we bring, whether it's with the technology or the new ways of using things. I think recently we actually launched an update to our Buds 2 Pro that further enhances the ambient sound mode. And that specifically helps people with hearing disabilities hear better, right? And be more in tune when they need to be, and, sort of be very aware of their surroundings. So for us, it's not something that we think about after. It's something that goes into the process when we're thinking about what is the next step for how we drive evolution with technology that is supportive of every person's individual needs.
I think also on this topic, mental health has become a bigger topic of conversation, and resources that companies have for their employees, and also companies supporting external mental health initiatives. So, I think to your point, the DE&I, and what is the definition of it, and what does diversity mean, and what does inclusion mean, and it's allowed companies to then look bigger, and different ways to support all different diverse groups. All right. Okay. Go ahead. How are we on time? 5 minutes. Okay.
I'll take that one. Hi, James. So I
Planted question.
no. We used to work together. I think it goes back to the question earlier about are women still part of the DE&I conversation, right? Intersectionality is everything because we're not just one, we don't check just one box. We check multiple boxes. In fact, I wouldn't check any boxes if we didn't have to. But that's the thinking is that at the end of the day, it's all about belonging. And how do you, have that awareness as a marketer to remove the barriers that, maybe people who hadn't previously had a seat at the table or who weren't represented before. It's about, removing those barriers so that they do feel like they belong. So, there isn't one size fits all. Obviously, budgets are limited, and so you have to make choices as a marketer. But how can you represent people in a way that's authentic to the brand and to the message that you're trying to convey as a brand?
Yeah, I think that's a great point about going back to the customer, because I really feel like at the end of the day, I want every customer to feel like this is an airline for them, that they can see themselves in the airline, they are welcomed onto the airline, that they feel loyal to it, and that should apply to everyone in no matter what form or fashion. And intersectionality, all of those different standpoints, really, whoever you are, however you identify, that you feel like this is a place that you can belong, where you're welcome, and that you're going to get great service and go forward.
I think we had one more question.
Thank you for bringing that up. I think it has to go back to the core of who your brand is, right? You have to have the open and honest dialogue with what do you bring to the table? What are your brand attributes? What's your core positioning, right? Does it fit in this conversation? Or I always go back to, have you had a conversation in this space in the past, right? Is there consistency that's coming from a brand like yours? And I think when things bubble up and everyone is a part of the conversation, a lot of brands feel that pressure that they want to jump in, but it's not always the right thing to do. So I think when you talk about that moment of authenticity and making sure that you're not falling way back in the conversation because you don't want to get left behind, but you have to find what is the prioritized moment for you that makes sense for who you are as a brand. And again, that starts with having an authentic conversation with yourself as a brand about what are the attributes that you bring to the table that actually fulfill any aspects of that conversation.
I guess I would add too, so there's 10 executive leadership in our team. Our CEO is consistent in making sure that all 10 of us are invited to the table to discuss these. We don't just put things out there just because it's the press PR person or anything. It's just her and go deal with it. It's all of us making sure that we are representing the organization, period, and we're speaking for our teams, our area. It's not just marketing, it's not just comms all the time. It never is. So anything that you ever see out there, trust me, there was 10 people behind that decision, putting that out, unless it comes from Mark, that's on you, but that's the bit from the Dallas Mavs. That is a very consistent way of leading from her end. And it's so important to all of us because my voice is as important as the CFO, as the CTO, as the COO, everyone. But it's also important to make sure that you tap into your own groups and figure out, how do you feel about it? That I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for because every company is going to be different. But it starts from there, and then you identify: is this something we need to speak on? Is it something that, you know what, let's just stay away from this because of X, Y, Z? That is going to be a per company discussion.
And to be clear, it's not that you not saying anything means that you don't care or that you're shying away from the topic. I think it's what you said earlier, right? It's, do you have the authority, right? Do you have the education, the background? Do you have the history of being a part of certain conversations, right? Because you don't want to just come in and muddy the waters, right? And just be another voice. You want to have a distinct presence and a distinct perspective that actually elevates the conversation versus just being another voice in the crowd. Look, FOMO applies to brands too, so.
Well, thank you all so much for this very interesting and important discussion. And thanks all for joining.
Thank you.